Hey bosses, and welcome back to Boss Economic World. The only show on the internet that puts the global economy on the therapist's couch to figure out its commitment issues. I'm your host, and today we're talking about a story that has it all: ghosts of industries past, a tech messiah promising salvation, and a president trying to ride two horses at once. And spoiler alert, those horses are running in opposite directions. The date is October 25, 2025. And if you want to understand the absolute roller coaster that is the American economy right now, you don't need a PhD in economics. You just need a GPS pointed at Lordstown, Ohio. Let's recap the saga of this one giant factory. It's like a Hollywood blockbuster franchise that keeps getting rebooted with a new director every few years. First, you had the OG, General Motors. For 50 years, this place was the beating heart of the Rust Belt, churning out Chevy Impalas and employing a small city's worth of people. Then, in 2017, President Trump rolls into a nearby rally, full of that signature swagger, and tells the crowd, "Don't sell your house, because the good old days were coming back." Well, less than 2 years later, GM shuttered the plant. Ouch. Next up, the plucky underdog, the EV startup Lordstown Motors. They were going to be the future. Electric trucks. Green jobs. They moved in, got a ton of hype, and went bankrupt by 2023. Double ouch. So now, the factory sits there, a 6.2 million square foot monument to broken promises. But wait. Here comes the third act twist. A new team of Avengers has assembled: Foxconn, the folks who build your iPhones; OpenAI, the brains behind the digital brain you talk to every day; and SoftBank, the Japanese investment giant with pockets deeper than the Mariana Trench. Their plan? To turn this cathedral of carburetors into a holy site for artificial intelligence. A manufacturing hub for AI equipment, complete with its own demonstration data center. The AI boom has arrived in America's heartland. And on the surface, this looks like a win, right? A derelict factory brought back to life by the hottest tech on the planet. But here's the billion-dollar question, folks: is this AI gold rush actually getting in the way of Trump's grand promise to make America great again at, making things? Tangible things, like cars, steel, and furniture? Because right now, AI is the new prom king of the economy. It's got the looks, the charm, and it's getting all the attention. And for any big project to succeed, you need three key ingredients: capital, power, and people. And AI is currently hoovering up all three like a Dyson on max setting. Don't just take my word for it. Listen to John Engel, the CEO of Wesco International, a company that sells all the electrical gear that makes these projects go. He put it perfectly: AI is consuming a lot of the oxygen in the room. That's where the major growth is now. And if you don't have, in some form or fashion, a solution or play in that, it's unfortunate. You're missing out. Translation: if your business isn't connected to AI, you might as well be selling Blockbuster memberships. Let's talk about the scale of this thing, because it's hard to wrap your head around. This isn't just a trend, it's a tidal wave of cash. Bloomberg Economics estimates that the big players, the hyperscalers like Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft, are set to pour as much as $4 trillion into AI infrastructure by 2030. $4 trillion. That's not just a build-out, it's a civilization-level project. We're talking about an investment spree on par with the construction of the entire US railway system in the 1870s or the fiber optic mania of the late 90s .com bubble. And we all remember how that last one ended for Pets.com. This massive spending spree is basically propping up the entire US economy right now. It's like the economy is a Jenga tower, and while all the other blocks are getting wobbly, someone just shoved a solid gold, diamond-encrusted AI block into the base. Let's look at the tale of two economies. On one hand, the broader manufacturing sector is in a funk. The Institute for Supply Management's index shows factory activity has actually contracted for 7 straight months through September. The latest payroll numbers, once you look past the headline unemployment rate, are troubling. And consumer sentiment? It's plunged to levels we haven't seen since the Great Recession. People are feeling squeezed. But thanks to AI, the GDP numbers look okay. The research firm Pantheon Macroeconomics ran the numbers and found something stunning. In the first half of 2025, US GDP grew at a modest 1.6%. But here's the kicker: if you strip out the spending on AI infrastructure and the wealth effect from soaring AI stock prices, that growth rate would have been just 1%. Rebecca Patterson, a former top strategist at the world's biggest hedge fund, Bridgewater, basically said it out loud: if it weren't for AI, we'd probably be looking at significantly slower growth or even a modest recession. AI is the economy's performance-enhancing drug. It makes the whole system look stronger and faster than it really is. And nobody is a bigger fan of this performance enhancer than the president himself. This is where the story gets really juicy, folks. Because President Trump is trying to have his cake and eat it too, and he's getting frosting all over his policies. On one hand, he's embraced AI like a long-lost son. He sees its potential to boost US competitiveness and national security. The White House dropped an AI action plan in July. He hosted a schmancy dinner for the CEOs of Google, Meta, Microsoft, and OpenAI. He's been a cheerleader for the Stargate project, a mind-boggling $500 billion collaboration between OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank to build a nationwide network of AI data centers, including the one in Lordstown. But while the AI party is raging in one room of the White House, in the other room, Trump's policies are systematically kneecapping the traditional manufacturing he promised to revive. Remember the promise? Fill up the factories. Well, spending on the construction of new factories is actually down 2.5% so far this year. Meanwhile, spending on data center construction is up almost 18%. The numbers don't lie. Why? Because the administration's policies are creating a hurricane of uncertainty. The ever-shifting tariffs, the crackdown on immigration shrinking the labor pool, the yanking of support for EVs and green tech, it's all telling manufacturers, don't bother investing here. Paul Kedrisky, a fellow at MIT who's been tracking this, worries that the sheer scale of the AI boom is blinding policymakers. He says, this thing is so large that it's breaking people's mental models of how the economy works, and they're making mistakes as a result. The biggest mistake? The tariffs. The hyperscalers, the darlings of the AI world, have somehow managed to secure broad tariff exemptions from the White House for all the imported servers and hardware they need. But when traditional manufacturers ask for similar waivers on the robots and machinery they need to build or expand their US factories? Crickets. In fact, just last month, the Commerce Department launched another investigation into imported industrial machinery that will likely lead to even more tariffs. It's like telling one runner they can use the track for free while forcing the other runner to carry a refrigerator on their back. For many companies, these tariffs are completely wiping out any benefit from the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed this summer. The National Association of Manufacturers was all for that bill. But when they surveyed their own members, nearly 80% said the burden of tariffs was their number one concern. Their forecast for capital spending next year? A pathetic 1% rise, not even enough to keep up with inflation. By some estimates, Trump's import levies are the single largest tax hike on American companies since the 1990s. Let's put some real numbers on this pain. Heavy machinery giant Caterpillar? Tariffs will cost them up to $1.8 billion this year. General Motors? A gut punch of $4.5 billion. And what about the jobs? The whole point of all this, right? Since Trump unveiled his Liberation Day tariffs back in April, the manufacturing sector has shed 42,000 jobs. It's the longest losing streak since the pandemic. It's so stark that Barclays analyst Julian Mitchell wrote a note to clients in August calling the industrial recovery suspect and bluntly stating that AI is the only game in town. So what we have is a classic case of economic cannibalization. The AI boom isn't just growing alongside the old economy, it's actively feeding on it. It's a zero-sum game for the three things that matter most: capital, people, and power. 1. The capital hunger. Money flows where the returns are highest. It's Economics 101. Right now, why would an investor pour money into building a new factory that faces high labor costs, supply chain uncertainty, and crippling tariffs, when they can invest in a data center project that has government backing, tariff exemptions, and an almost guaranteed fire hose of revenue? It's a no-brainer. And we're seeing companies make that choice in real time. Take ABB, the Swiss industrial giant. They make factory robots, the very things you'd need for a manufacturing renaissance. But this month, they agreed to sell their industrial robot business to SoftBank for over $5 billion. Why? To double down on their more profitable business, selling electrical equipment to data centers. They are literally abandoning the tools of the old economy to feed the new one. The CEO, Morten Wirad, said it himself, the return on data centers is just significantly better. 2. The people hunger. The AI build-out is creating jobs, for sure. But it's a very specific kind of job: construction workers, electricians, welders, pipefitters. And guess what? America has a massive, chronic shortage of these skilled tradespeople. According to the Associated Builders and Contractors, the U.S. is short 439,000 construction workers this year. 1 in 5 of their member companies is working on a data center project. They are all competing for the same tiny pool of qualified electricians and mechanics. And what has been the administration's signature policy on labor? A crackdown on immigration, which has historically been a vital source of workers for the construction trades. John Fish, the CEO of Suffolk Construction, which is building over 30 data centers, is sounding the alarm. He says every part of the country is struggling to find people and that we're heading for a catastrophic problem in our workforce. The economy needs more technicians, and our policy is creating fewer of them. It's like trying to put out a fire with a can of gasoline. 3. The power hunger. This, folks, might be the biggest bottleneck of all. The AI revolution runs on electricity. A staggering, world-altering amount of it. The International Energy Agency says a typical AI data center consumes as much power as 100,000 homes. But the new, massive ones being built today? They will consume 20 times that amount. That's the equivalent of a city of 2 million people. Bloomberg Intelligence estimates that by 2032, data centers could account for 20% of all U.S. electricity demand. Think about that. 1/5 of the nation's power grid, just to ask chatbots to write poems and generate pictures of cats in space. This isn't some abstract future problem. It's happening now. In parts of the country with a high concentration of data centers, wholesale electricity costs have shot up by as much as 267% in the past 5 years. Your power bill is going up to subsidize this boom. And the final, absurd irony? The Trump administration is dead set on rolling back federal support for renewable energy, the cheapest and fastest way to add new generating capacity. So we're demanding a historic amount of new electricity while simultaneously making it harder to produce it. It's a recipe for blackouts and skyrocketing energy prices for everyone, including the very manufacturers we're supposedly trying to help. Okay, before you sell all your stocks and start hoarding canned goods, let's take a breath. It's not all doom and gloom. There is an argument that this short-term pain could lead to long-term gain. The optimists say that the immense pressure AI is putting on the system will force innovation. For example, companies are already developing labor-saving construction methods, like prefabricating huge sections of buildings off-site. Tech giants are pouring billions into R&D to create more energy-efficient chips and cooling systems, like the one Microsoft just unveiled. And Amir Paul, who runs North American operations for Schneider Electric, makes a good point. He argues that once all this AI infrastructure is built, it will eventually benefit manufacturing. Superintelligent robots could finally solve America's decades-long productivity stagnation and ease the labor crunch. He admits there's an element of tension in the short term, but there's an opportunity. It's the classic creative destruction argument. You have to tear down the old to build the new. The question is, are we being creative or just destructive? Which brings us full circle, back to that giant factory in Ohio. In August, the deal was done. SoftBank is the new owner. They plan to start manufacturing data center equipment on the very same site where Chevy Impalas once rolled off the line. They say the venture will be running by 2026 and will employ about 1,600 people. And 1,600 jobs are not nothing. For a town that's been bled dry, it's a lifeline. But let's put that number in perspective. At its peak, the GM plant employed 12,000 workers. High-tech manufacturing and data centers are hyper-automated. They run on code and electricity, not crowds of people. The unemployment rate in Trumbull County, where the plant is 6.2%, way above the Ohio average. This new project won't fix that. And the locals? They're wary. They have long memories. They remember Foxconn's other big promise in Wisconsin, the one Trump called the eighth wonder of the world, a $10 billion factory that never got built. To a community built on the tangible grid of heavy industry, AI feels amorphous. Unreliable. The Lordstown Village Council is even thinking about passing an ordinance to ban any more data centers. I want to leave you with the words of Arno Hill, the former longtime mayor of Lordstown. He's retired now, but he's watched this whole drama unfold from his front row seat. When asked about this new AI future, he just sighed and said, "They say it's the wave of the future, but does that market ever get saturated?" Then he added a line that perfectly captures the tension at the heart of the 2025 American economy. People are always going to need cars. He's right. But for now, in the great battle for America's economic soul, the robots are winning.